Hello, everybody. I hope you are doing well. I'm Julie from Maison Jupiter, and I'm here today with my soul sister, Meg Moonbeam from Maison Jupiter as well. How are you, Meg?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Very good. This Saturn energy is pushing everything around. It's kind of a big whirlwind of energy. So we'll talk about that
hmm
because, yeah, it's a topic for today, right?
Yeah, big
Very
topic.
big topic indeed.
hmm
So we're here for the Astro Decode, and today we're going to talk about Saturn, or Granddaddy Saturn, as Meg likes to call him. So it's very funny because we didn't really plan it this way, but today, as we're filming this, the sun is in a conjunction with Saturn. So the sun bringing a light, bringing consciousness and awareness to what Saturn is. So I was like, wow, Meg, did you plan it this way? She's like, no. Like, isn't it funny how the universe works sometimes?
I love that. I always say to people, like, we can be following the astrology every single day and be really anal about it. But even if we're not, things just happen how they're supposed to happen. It's
So
funny
that's
that.
that's how you know it really works. It's not like a made up thing.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's not like we're bad astrologers, that we're just really busy people. So we don't always look at charts, but we should do it more.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and if you guys haven't watched the show from last night, it was the no, not the Astro Decode, it was the Divine Feminine
Yeah.
Oracles. It was an amazing show right here from last night. If you haven't watched, it was with Sophie, and JC did a surprise appearance at the end. So go check it out if you haven't. It was an amazing episode. What did you think of this episode last night, Meg?
I loved it. That was a really special time that we had together. And I love that JC surprised us and came in, and we had the divine feminine oracles with the divine masculine oracle.
Yes.
And that was like a healing experience, I think, for
Oh,
all
yeah.
of us and everybody that was watching. So go check that episode out, you guys. That was powerful.
Very emotional, right?
Yeah.
At the end, we were like, oh my God, that's such like this Pisces energy, like all crying together.
Yeah, so true.
So, guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, Maison Jupiter. And also, you can check out our all the episodes that we're doing for Beyond Mystics YouTube channel. So please also subscribe to this one. And Meg just released today at noon her Beyond Astro, so here weekly forecast. So these are really good episodes. I highly recommend. She goes through all the astrological alignments at the moment. So very, very cool, and lots of great information by the amazing Meg. And also, please like this video. It helps us create even more original content for you guys. So today, with the super chats, we'll be answering one question at the end of the episode. So if you'd like to ask us a question regarding astrology, please do so with the super chats. And we'll also have a giveaway for one of those super chats. And today it's going to be the magic candle. So the
Mm.
magic candle is peppermint, vanilla, and clove. And these are handmade candles by the amazing Elena. And she charges the crystals at every full moon. So these are like energy healed crystals infused in those candles. They are amazing, and they burn for a really long time. It's surprising. And
They
they
really
smell
do.
amazing. They do, right?
That, like, it's the best candle I've ever had. The one that you
Oh,
gifted me at Christmas. I love them.
oh, nice. I love it. So one of you supporters will get this magic candle from Elena and Maison Jupiter. So let's dive in our main content for today. So Saturn, Saturn, Saturn. So first of all, before we talk about more serious stuff about Saturn, I'd like to know, Meg, did it impact you in some kind of way in your personal life these past days since we've been having this conjunction or almost conjunction with the sun? Can you
Mhm.
like pin something out or for this conjunction?
Well, I've been going through the end now of my first Saturn return. So I've been feeling like all the interesting Saturn aspects we've been having, I'm already kind of in it, being in the Saturn return energy. But I have felt the past few days this, I always feel Saturn is like a heaviness behind me. Like there's something on my back energetically, which may sound weird, but that's just how I feel it. We all feel things in different ways. And I've been feeling that even more the past few days, like this energy on my back of it's time to work hard. It's time to get things done. It's time to be focusing on certain things. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm already doing hard work. So what, I have to do more. Like I'm feeling that, like Saturn really pushing us right now, those of us who are light workers in particular, to build the world we need to build. I'm really feeling that from Saturn right now.
And you know what? I feel like once you had your first Saturn return at about, we'll talk about that later on in details, but about 30 years old, you get your first Saturn return, and about 60 years old, you get your second. So I feel like once you go through the first one, I feel like Saturn transits and Saturn energy gets a lot better, because Saturn is an energy that you master with time and with hard working. So not necessarily just with time, because let's say someone can try to avoid, let's say, structuring their lives, which is a Saturn theme. But if you put in the efforts where Saturn wants you to build a strong structure in your life, and you take responsibility, which is another big word for Saturn, I feel like it gets a lot easier. Because Saturn also deals with karma. So it's bringing you the rewards of your hard-earned efforts. And personally, like, I'm feeling this Saturn transit a lot better these past days because of this karmic energy. It's like I've worked really hard with, not to disclose any details, but regarding my dad's passing, I had a lot of responsibilities to take care of, and a lot of stuff wasn't moving, and a lot of stagnation. So I was very frustrated by that. And since we've been having this conjunction, everything started to move like super fast ahead. So I'm happy and I feel good about that. It's just a lot of responsibilities, but I'll get through it.
Yeah. That's so interesting, how he rules karma. And if we've been on a path of, doing our best personally and professionally, we do get rewarded, like you said, when those aspects come with Saturn, which is so cool.
Totally. So first, let's start, Meg. I'd like to ask you about what can you tell us about the meaning of Saturn if we talk about astronomy? So more of observation and the planet itself. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I think it's really important when it comes to astrology that it's not just about, the spiritual aspects and meanings of things, but also when we look at things practically and in a grounded way. This is like Saturn talking through me right now.
I love it.
Practical about things, we can actually learn even from the practical side, not just the spiritual side. And astronomy is like the practical science of cosmos, right? Whereas astrology also is practical in the sense that it's things we've learned through observation, but bringing in the spiritual side of things and the archetypes and stuff. So Saturn, astronomically, some things that are really important to know about it is it's the second largest planet. Okay, so Jupiter being the largest and Saturn being the second largest. So it has a really big impact on us. It is 755 times greater in volume than the Earth.
Wow.
I mean, I can't even wrap my head around that. 755 times greater than the Earth. So it's huge. And Saturn, yes, he's about, practicality and the structures of life, which we'll get into the astrological meanings of it. But he has no solid surface. He's made of gases. So if we were to go on to Saturn, we wouldn't be able to walk around on Saturn.
Not in this dimension, or
not in this dimension. Yeah, that's correct. You're right on, Julie. Our physical bodies right now, it's not familiar territory. And Saturn is also the planet that is the kind of boundary line between the inner planets and the outer planets. So, in astronomy, we look at it like that boundary line. And isn't it funny that in astrology, Saturn rules boundaries? So that's what I'm trying to say, you guys. Like when we look at the planets in their astronomical sense and meaning, it also holds value in their astrological meaning.
Yeah.
Big time. And Saturn was the last planet until 1781, like the last farthest out planet that we were aware of, or that we've been told that our ancestors were aware of. They probably knew a lot more than we've been told. But in the mainstream since 1781, and that's when Uranus was discovered. And what's kind of interesting is before Uranus was discovered, the lifespan of people was a lot shorter. So it was kind of like one Saturn return cycle or two Saturn return cycles. People lived until like 30, and then they lived until like 60. And then when Uranus was discovered, Uranus's solar orbit, how long it takes to go around the sun, is 84 years. That's actually late 1700s is when people's lifespans extended. So it's so interesting, like the correlations between the astronomy and the astrology. I love it.
And if I can add something, my personal feeling is that we're now expanding to a Pluto life expectancy, which is about 240 something years. So I think that's the next big step we'll take. Since Pluto will change sign during this transit in Aquarius, I think our life expectancy will be a lot longer, and I think it's going to match Pluto's cycles. That's my personal intuition.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and also Saturn has rings, right? It's the only planet that has visible rings. So that also talks about boundaries. So yeah, very interesting. So, and I'm just going to say here, because I heard a lot of Saturn talk, let's say, in the esoteric world and spiritual world, and people seem to demonize Saturn a lot. And yes, we'll talk about this side of Saturn. It's true that Saturn is more can be associated with Satan and all that stuff. We'll talk about it with Meg, but I just want to point out here that we live in a dual reality. So everything has to do with duality in the 3D. So Saturn also has a higher frequency expression of its archetype. And basically, I'm going to go through the details in a slide just a bit. But basically, Saturn wants you to build a strong structure. So it wants to be long lasting in the material world, which is not a bad thing at all. Because if we demonize everything that's material in 3D, then I don't think it's also helping us evolve, because it's part of the spiritual ascension. Everything that is material and it's earthbound is also part of our ascension process. And Saturn has a lot of lessons to teach us regarding spirituality.
Yeah.
What would you say? Oh yeah, Orion 555. Oh my God, 240 years. I'm going to have to stay in shape. Yes. Let's start working on it now, so we make sure we hit this 240 years. So Meg, how would you describe Saturn in relationship to spirituality? How can we relate it to more esoteric and spiritual concepts?
Well, Saturn is very, very important, because to me, I'd like to hear what you feel, but I feel like Saturn is the most grounded planet, the most practical planet. And, in our spiritual community, there's a lot of, I think, belief around that we're not really this body, and it doesn't matter who our ancestors are, and it doesn't matter my body, it doesn't matter what I eat. I'm just this Pleiadian having a human experience, right? Like just the woo-woo side, which I'm into all that. But Saturn is about being here in the practical and what our legacy is going to be. Saturn rules legacy, success, our career, our purpose spiritually, and the practical side of life. So that's why those of us who are beautiful, highly sensitive people, sometimes when we have Saturn transits or Saturn return, it's tough because there's this huge program in the spiritual community to not be grounded, to not be in the practical side of life, to not care about money and not care about success.
Yes. I
Isn't
love
that?
the fact that we're totally in the same frequency there. Yes.
Yeah. Whereas Saturn is like, no, and I'm just getting a visual of something I felt a lot of times, which is there's so many souls that could have been here at this time in a physical body at this time on the earth. And it is such a gift to be here. It is such a gift to be in a physical body and to create a beautiful, successful life. That to me is what Capricorn is.
Wow.
Or sorry, Saturn.
Or yeah, Capricorn, the ruler of Capricorn.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And it makes us think about this programmation that we've had, this programming that we've had about like what it should be to be a spiritual being incarnating on Earth, and the denial of all the material and the physical stuff, which is a big part of the ascension journey. So I totally agree with you on that. Amazing. And how can you, what would you say to spiritual people that are trying to maybe integrate Saturnian lessons? What would be your advice on how, now that you just went through your Saturn return, what would be your advice to spiritual people on how to deal with Saturn lessons?
So, Saturn rules responsibility. When I first heard you say that, I was going to say it rules discipline. And my ego was saying, answer discipline. That's the good answer. Like, that's what my ego was saying. But I believe everybody is different. So discipline is different for all of us. But Saturn, to me, the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is responsibility. Once we're aware of what our responsibility is, our values, which is more Taurus in astrology, is our values, but Saturn, our responsibility. What do we feel the responsibility to do here? Then we're on the right track with Saturn. And what steps do we need to make practically to create that responsibility, to share that responsibility out in the world? So, for us, one of the things, I hope you don't mind me speaking for you, we're both really into astrology. So I feel like one of our Saturnian responsibilities is to share the astrology.
Yes.
That's like a responsibility. It's not just a gift and a passion and woo, I'm an astrologer. Awesome. It's actually a responsibility that we have.
Totally. I agree with you 100%. And also I feel like it's going to differ from one person to another. What responsibilities will you have to take, let's say, control of during this lifetime regarding your life mission and what you're here to do? So it's not necessarily what the society will tell you it should be your responsibility, is what makes sense for your soul. So that's will be a more individual process. And the other thing I wanted to add to what you just said is that, I can't remember who said that, but freedom comes with a lot of responsibilities. So if you guys remember who said that, please leave it in the chat. I can't right now, but and it's funny that Saturn is also the traditional ruler of Aquarius, which is the sign of freedom. So when you want to, let's say, leave the matrix and live more on your own and be more self-sufficient, which is more Aquarian, you start to notice that it does really come with a lot of responsibilities, which is Saturn. So you have to build structures, you have to build boundaries for yourself. It's not coming from a government anymore or a superimposed structure over yourself. It's coming from your own authority, your own responsibility, which is, I think, the higher frequency lesson of Saturn. It's to become your own authority. So you start in this lifetime by having authority figures trying to put rules on you and try to control you and tell you, oh, this is the way it is. This is how you got to do things. And then you end up after your first Saturn return and then your second, which I can speak about because I haven't had my second return yet. But it makes you realize that the goal here is to learn the lessons to integrate and become your own authority. Do you agree with that, Meg?
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Nice. So okay, let's go over maybe. Oh, here Sherry says second Saturn return, Aquarius and Aquarius rising. Wow, 28. I love it. I'm guessing once you go through your second Saturn return, you're a lot more mature and wise. I'm pretty sure of that. And thank you so much here, Sindelish06. Hi, ladies. Really appreciating everything you are giving to us. Thank you so much for supporting us. We really appreciate it too. And thank you, everybody, for being there in the chat. We appreciate your comments throughout this whole show. So, okay, let's go over my slide that I prepared here. So, Meg talked about more, let's say, of the spiritual archetype, how is it felt, but in astrology, each archetype rules a lot of practical stuff in our day-to-day life. So let's go over what Saturn rules together. So first of all, it's the ruler of time. So that's an important one. And more of a long time, let's say, modality than something that's short-lived. Saturn, it wants to build for the long term. So and sometimes it's slow moving also, and you can experience some delays sometimes also with Saturn. If you have, let's say, a Saturn transit, or, well, it's funny because right now as we're filming this, everybody is going to feel the Saturn energy. So I'm sure you guys will notice how it is affecting you in your personal lives. And I'd like to know how it is affecting you. So please comment in the chat and let us know, how do you feel this Saturn energy right now? Or if it's affecting your chart, let us know also in the chat or in the comments below if you're watching after. So delays, yes. And second point, we talked about authority. Also, it's a planet known for control. So wanting control. It's the ruler of Capricorn, which is the leader, which is the authority figure. So wanting to control and implement some kind of structure upon, let's say, other people or resources or elements. It's also known to be a status type of planet because it rules the Capricorn, which is kind of the 10th house energy. So having an important status in society is kind of important for Saturn. Having, let's say, being renowned for something would be Saturn. Also, it's the planet that rules work, responsibilities, discipline. And if you want to go through a Saturn, let's say, aspect, and you want to do it as, let's say, easy as possible, it's not an easy planet, but let's say you want to go through it the easiest way possible, you'll have to work hard. There's like no shortcuts with Saturn. If Saturn is aspecting your chart or you're going through a Saturn aspect, you have to work hard to achieve success because Saturn likes to repeat lessons until it gets it. So it also repetition. So let's say you're trying to, oh, I know someone who was trying to get pregnant and she has her Saturn in her 8th house, which is the house of fertility, Scorpio ruled. And I told her, with Saturn there, first of all, it's not going to be easy, very unfortunately, because Saturn depletes the energy of a house. But if you would like it to happen, then you'll have to try and try again, which is Saturn, repetition to achieve success. Also, the planet of karma. So it's kind of you reap what you sow type of energy with Saturn, which is a very important point because Saturn likes time. But let's say if you go through your second Saturn return and you haven't learned the karmic lessons, you'll have more, let's say, karmic rewards that are not going to feel very positive for you because it's kind of, you'll get the rewards you worked for with Saturn. And again, there's no shortcuts with this energy. Also, let's say in the lower frequency of Saturn, it rules hardships and challenges. But even the higher, I feel like it tests you to know where are you willing to put in the efforts to become the greater version of yourself. So it's also a high frequency, I would say, energy of Saturn, because it pushes you to become the better version of yourself if you do accept the challenge. Yeah, we said depletes the energy of a sign, of a planet. Generally speaking, it rules dark colors and also dark energy, cold. Saturn is a cold planet, and dry. So I don't think it's a coincidence we're both wearing black today. I was thinking about Saturn colors. I was like, oh, okay, it's black or dark. So it's not a coincidence. Also, it's very earthbound, very practical, very 3D, this Saturn energy. It has a stabilizing influence. And I would say that's one of the good qualities of Saturn. So again, with time and efforts, you'll stabilize some kind of situation where it hits your birth chart. Also, it talks about reliability, some kind of respect, because you're kind of you have achieved some kind of status or authority figure. And Saturn is more of a strict planet. And I remember Astro Lada Duncheva, she said, Saturn is kind of a constipated planet. So she always makes me laugh when she says that, but it's so true. And regarding more the finances, if you have, like, let's say an important Saturn in your chart, sometimes it makes you a bit cheap. So you don't want to pay very expensive for things, but that can also be a very, very good quality, because a lot of international leaders have a good aspected Saturn. So they profit a lot, especially with a Jupiter Saturn good aspect between those. So they profit a lot with selling cheap things to people. So Saturn is preserving, wants to be very minimalistic about, let's say, money and about resources, and generally speaking. Other stuff that it rules, well, it's Saturday, so it's the day of Saturn. So if you ever have to do something very Saturnian, you can plan it on a Saturday. It rules stones, sand, anything that's very earthy and next close to the soil would be Saturn. Dark colors, simple foods. So if you have like a really strong Saturn, especially on your ascendant, it's nice to have very simple food, not a lot of mixes. So like, let's say vegetables, if you eat meat, then the meat, but very simple, like the old days. That would be Saturnian foods. And on the lower frequency of Saturn, it rules also empty foods like chips that are dehydrated. That would be Saturn. In the body, it rules teeth, bones, and for the body, it rules more of a strong body, but very slim, because Saturn is like close to the bones type of bodies. Also, it rules self-esteem. So if you have a badly aspected Saturn, you'll have to work a lot through developing more self-esteem in your life. There's going to be a lot of tests and challenges to not feel like an imposter. That's going to be a very important Saturn challenge for you. And again, repetition to succeed at something. It rules being more careful, more mature, elderly people. And it's more of an isolated planet, because also it rules boundaries, and also being more introverted would be Saturn. How do you feel about all of this, Meg? Did I forget something?
Yeah, that was all amazing information. That is like a university style, like little
I'm a Virgo.
visual. Yeah, I love it. Such important information. And yeah, I think you pretty much covered the most important things. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So we'll go to our next slide, and then I'll Okay, I'll explain to you guys what it means, visually speaking, to have a Saturn return for people that it's maybe a bit abstract what we're talking about, and then I'll let Meg speak about what it is to have a Saturn return, how it feels, because she has a lot of experience now. So let's say your natal Saturn is here in the beginning degrees of Pisces. So let's say this is your birth chart, your natal chart. And if you'd like to get a birth chart, you can do your birth chart on maisonjupiter.com if you haven't done it already. It comes also with a 15 to 20 pages report. So just saying that right here. But if you do know your birth chart, then take your natal placement for your Saturn. So let's say here in this example, it's in the early degrees of Pisces. And on the outside ring here in red, that'll be our transiting planets that are in the sky right now. So let's say Saturn will enter Pisces in March. So let's say for someone that has Saturn in the early degrees of Pisces, we'll have a Saturn return in March, or very close to March, depending on the degrees. So Saturn in the sky will be in the exact same degree as your natal Saturn. That's going to be a Saturn return. And then in astrology, don't forget that we move counterclockwise with the planets transiting your birth chart. So here, after let's say 7.5 years or something like that, you'll have a Saturn square. So Saturn in the sky will be making a square, so 90-degree angle to your natal Saturn. This is what I just had last year, by the way. That was an interesting transit. More about that in a bit. And then let's say 7.5 years later, about 15 years from your Saturn return, you'll have a Saturn opposition. So Saturn in the sky will oppose your natal Saturn. And then 7.5 years later, you'll have your last closing square between Saturn in the sky and your natal. And 7.5 years later, you'll have another Saturn return at about 60 years old. So, tell us about your Saturn return. How did it feel, Meg? And what would you like to let the audience know how to navigate this energy the best way possible?
Well, first of all, it's going to be a little bit different, excuse me, for everyone in terms of what sign your Saturn is in and what house your Saturn is in, also the degree of your Saturn, and if you have any strong aspects, including your Saturn in your birth chart. But for everyone, this is the time, particularly the first Saturn return. Okay, so about every 28 years when Saturn comes back to that point that you just beautifully showed us, to the point it was at when we were born, the sign and the degree it was at when we were born. This is when the first Saturn return is when we truly become an adult, which sounds kind of interesting and weird because we're very programmed by the matrix that we become an adult at the legal age, right?
Right.
The legal age that, you know, who created that? Like reptiles, we're not totally sure, right? So like when we can drink, when we can join the army, those things is when we're an adult. But really in astrology and natural time, we become an adult when Saturn, the planet of maturity, time, aging, our elders, and responsibility, comes back to the place it was when we were born. This is when we actually truly become an adult. And it is not an easy time, the first Saturn return. And different people will have it in a different way. I'm someone that I have Saturn in Aquarius, which is one of Saturn's home signs. So if you have Saturn in Capricorn or Aquarius, or I just saw Joan W here said, I have Saturn in Pisces at a 29th degree. Like if you have Saturn in one of its home signs or exalted sign of Libra or a critical degree, 0, 15, or 29, it's going to be, you know, buckle up, put your seatbelt on because it's going to be a strong Saturn return probably. And it's strong for everybody, but this is where Saturn is challenge and initiation and hard work. And he does not give us anything for free. So, you know, Jupiter, I always compare Jupiter to Saturn because Jupiter is like when we have our lucky Jupiter returns every 12 years. When Jupiter comes into the same sign it was in every 12 years as we were born, Jupiter just gives us gifts. Jupiter just gives us blessings. There's no really work involved. It's just, here's a gift. Here's this money. Here's this, new boyfriend. Here's this, here's that. But Saturn is like, no, I'm going to make you work for it. Because true maturity and true wisdom is when you've actually gone through the struggle. That's what Saturn teaches us, the struggle to get to that reward. And that's something in spirituality, like I feel like sometimes we can have a hard time with, or maybe the matrix is trying to program our spiritual community with this, that we don't have to go through hardships or challenges to get rewards. But I think we do. I think you have to put work in. And I think that that's what Saturn teaches us.
It's the path of the initiate.
Right. The wisdom comes through the challenge. So every 28 years, particularly the first one, and we'll get to the second one in a minute, but the first one is when it starts to feel heavy. And let us know in the comments if this resonates with you guys. But for me, like going through my first Saturn return, the past 3 years have been freaking heavy. Just a heaviness. I feel tired. I feel hard on myself. I feel drained a lot of the time. I'd like to hear, Julie, how you felt. But it's like there's some sort of struggle going on. I feel like I'm in this initiation. I feel like I'm really working through something. And I feel different from Meg at 27 years old, 26 years old. It feels like I have a lot more life experience now. Being almost complete at the Saturn return, there were huge struggles for sure. So I'm a Saturn in Aquarius. So I don't know about you fellow Saturn in Aquariuses, but one of the challenges with Saturn and Aquarius is isolation and being isolated, being detached from the community. And I personally went through that for 2 years, not being able to be in my home country of Canada because of the restrictions.
Saturn.
Boundaries, Saturn. So that can manifest for us in different ways, depending on the sign and the house it's in. But it's that initiation time of putting us into adulthood. There is some kind of challenge during the first Saturn return that we have to go through. That when we get to the other side, we actually have the experience of that challenge to go, hey, even though I'm 30 years old, I'm not 60, I'm not 90, but I just went through something that made me a little bit more mature. I'm actually like an adult now. That's what the first Saturn return is. The second one, when we're around like 60 years old, like you said, Julie, is when we've gone through our 20s, our 30s, our 40s. We're in our 50s and we're not a young adult anymore. We're not a young pup, right? And we have wisdom. We have lived decades of adulthood and we're actually really wise. And it's that next stage of going into kind of elderhood, maybe grandmother or grandfatherhood. And that one is not as hard as the first one. I'd like to hear what you think about that as well, Julie. But I don't think the second one is anywhere near as hard as the first one because you've already been an adult. Right?
Yeah, I think it's asking you to step up even more into your role, your public role. Because I believe we discussed that with Janine recently. She just got her second Saturn return, and she was pushed big time by the universe to embark even more on her journey and become even more an authority, spiritually speaking and publicly speaking. So she worked a lot too, but more in the role of embodying her spiritual role publicly.
Wow, so cool.
Yeah, right. And if I can comment about, I remember my first Saturn return is when well, first of all, a lot of people have spiritual awakenings after their first Saturn return. So you were an early bird, Meg, because I know you kind of were awakened before that.
Yeah.
But most people, let's say the universe brings up some challenges and some situations when you have no choice but to take responsibility for yourself. is probably what happens the most in your first Saturn return. And for a lot of people, it is when they start to have an awareness that there's a bigger force over us. And for a lot of people, it triggers the spiritual awakening and embarking on this path. And it did for me too, because I was always into tarot, into like I knew there was life after death. Like I grew up with parents that were spiritually awakened before, so it was easier for me to get on that path. But when I had my first Saturn return, I changed my diet. I'm a Virgo sun in the first house, so for me it was through the physical body. So I changed my whole diet. I removed the medication I was on, and that started my spiritual awakening journey. And I just had my first square after my Saturn return. So I'm not telling you my age, but for if you listen carefully, you're gonna know it. But just going through, I just went through my first square after the return, and that was to push me on the path I already started during my Saturn return, and to push me to work really hard into building the structures. And I just looked at when exactly I had the square, and it was right when I did the first lives with JC and Janine with Beyond Mystic. So the universe was like, yes, you go ahead, girl, and you work hard. So yeah, I totally understand. I saw someone saying, I worked my butt off. Me too. I totally understand you.
Yeah. I also want to mention Lori Larson in the chat said, my second one was harder, death of a parent. So,
so
everyone everyone has such a different experience with it. It's really depends, like we said, on the sign and the house and the aspects with it. And I haven't gotten to that second one, so who knows? Maybe my second one will be harder than the first one.
Yeah, let's manifest it's gonna be easy.
Yeah, let's manifest it will be okay.
And I don't know what you think about that, Meg, but I heard that before your first Saturn return, you just live the same type of karmic patterns that you were used to do in past lives. And unconsciously. So you redo the same choices, let's say partners, work, same kind of mistakes. And you go over the same type of situations over and over again. And first Saturn return is when you have the first chance to take responsibility for yourself and get out of those karmic loops, because you have more awareness of who you are. And that makes sense, because if Saturn rules boundaries, then it's kind of allowing you to know what is truly your energy without the programming, the outside programming of your family, of society. So it's like, whoa, okay. So it's down that you acknowledge who you are, regardless of your programming, and then you put boundaries. That's not me. You reject some stuff, which is Saturn energy, rejecting, saying no. So I'm curious, what do you think about that, the past life stuff before 30?
That does make a lot of sense when you're saying that. I haven't heard that one before, I don't think, but it does resonate when you're saying that for sure. And I do feel like even though Pluto is like the cleansing planet, the detox planet, the destroyer, there's something about Saturn, maybe because they're both the malefics, actually, now that I think about it. Saturn also destroys certain things as well, clears the path in certain ways, but in a different way. And yeah, he is karma. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, and I just read a post with Astro on Facebook, I think this week, and she did a huge poll for people, what aspect was defining when they met like their life partner, and a lot of people answered a Saturn transit, especially in the 7th house, which is the exalted house for Saturn, because Saturn likes commitment. So Saturn, 7th house would be your relationship, so committing to a relationship. So that's interesting that a lot of Saturn transit can actually unfold like a great relationship in your life. So it's not all negative.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Beyond Infinite Love. This show last night was so inspiring. I really resonated with Sophie and her empathic struggles. Oh yeah, that was a great one. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I see a lot of great comments. Okay, so now let's talk about this Saturn transit that we're going to have in the sign of Pisces.
Mhm.
So, Meg, how do you think it's going to affect us collectively, this Saturn and Pisces transit?
Yeah, I think this is going to be really interesting. And like I know a lot of us have been saying, what once we get into March, once we get into March 7th, when Saturn goes into Pisces, and then March 24th, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, there's so much happening in March. This is totally different energy than what we've been in, I think, at any point in our lives so far. We have had Saturn before in Pisces in most of our lifetimes, for most of us probably watching in the early 90s, right, Julie?
Yeah.
And that was a time where there was a lot of really, depending on your musical tastes, a lot of really great music came out. Nirvana changed the world, and a lot of new kind of rock music, 90s dance music, electronic music innovation started. Pisces is one of the signs that rules music and creativity. There were a lot of really cool new types of films during the last Saturn and Pisces transit. So I'm excited for the creativity that is going to come out of this. I think that we've been waiting for some sort of musical revolution to happen with everything that's been going on, like a new, political, socio-political movement through the music. I think that might start with this Saturn in Pisces because it is the sign most related to music. But it's also spirituality, which I think is really interesting. Pisces is the most spiritually connected planet. So this is where I've been saying that I think mystics are going to come back into the government structures of the world in a more in your face way, not hidden. We've been in the Plutonian, Pluto and Capricorn, they've been hidden away. And even before that, this is where they come forward. This is where we may have new types of, I'll even say presidents or prime ministers, where there's something spiritual about them. There's something spiritually healing about them. And maybe they talk openly about astrology or spirituality and not necessarily just religion. I think that's a very big part of it. And were you going to say something, Julie?
Oh yeah, I was waiting for you to finish, but
Yeah,
I'll
go
just go
ahead.
ahead. It made me remember of Gosha from Cosmic Agency. We did an interview with her on the Beyond Mystic channel recently, and she did the whole decode of astrology, Pluto, and a lot of planets
Mhm.
on her channel. So go check that out. That was fascinating. She asked her contacts to shed some light into the questions we asked her with JC, and I asked her the same question that you put there, and I said we believe it's going to be maybe the Wu people returning with, let's say, authority figures and places in governments or any kind of structure. And she asked her ETs, and she asked if it would be accurate, and they said yes, absolutely, we believe so. So
Mm.
that was a great confirmation of
That's
your
really cool.
intuitive feeling. Yeah.
Amazing. That's really cool. Yeah, it's, I think, a lot of really cool Piscean innovation and creativity and spiritual stuff coming forward. But also, Pisces is the most ungrounded sign. Okay, it's the most spiritually connected, creative sign, which is not of the earth. Pisces rules that which is not of the earth, the other dimensions, the heavens, those realms. And Saturn is the most heaviest energy, the practical, grounded planet. So we've got the most grounded planet in the most ungrounded sign. And I've been feeling really like this, that anyone who is a Pisces sun, or maybe has a Pisces moon, rising, or stellium, some, strong Pisces placements. But even for all of us, we're going to really need to be doing, I think, extra grounding work, because Saturn is the structures of our life. And even though we've been in this crazy time the past few years, Saturn has been in Aquarius, one of its home signs. So there's still some sort of stability we've been feeling, even though the world is changing, even though it's really freaky. But once Saturn goes into Pisces, I don't think we'll be feeling that same stability. Does that make sense? It's going
Yes.
to be more, what Spirit is wanting me to say is otherworldly. It's going to feel otherworldly and dreamlike at times, and very like in between worlds, because we are in between worlds, I think, coming into
Right.
the
Well,
Aquarius,
it makes
right?
sense because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, so it completes a cycle, an evolutionary cycle. And Pisces is the dissolution of the old world to of a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that we're into the last, let's say, cleansing, removing of what no longer aligns with us as a collective before starting a whole new journey when Saturn enters Aries for a
Mm-hmm.
big cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And something else that's coming to mind right now, which I don't think we've talked about, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've talked about this yet with the Saturn and Pisces in some of the other videos, is like we put below in that screen, you know, it rules music, spirituality, filmmaking, volunteering, all that stuff. But it's also mental health, Pisces.
Mm,
And I'm really feeling that when Saturn, challenge, the planet of challenge, goes into Pisces, mental health
yeah.
and emotional well-being and sensitivity, where it's really going to come to the forefront what we've all been through, particularly in the past few years, that we have actually, I'm going to say, a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
I think, you know, that's like a trendy thing that's been talked about. Like, we have a mental health issue worldwide and da 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 da. But it's really going to be like, okay, we actually have a crisis. Like, people
Yeah.
are not feeling good right now, whether that's anxiety or depression or different mental health issues. So there's going to be, I think, new healing methods coming forward for sure for mental health and how we heal from what we've been through, in particular, the past few years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wrote that too in my notes. Mental health, depression. I think we'll deal with a lot of those, but also Pisces rules addictions. So there
Yes.
might be a lot of people taking, let's say, accountability, responsibility, and trying to get out of addictions with Saturn, which is going to require of you hard work. And
Mm,
addictions can be all sorts of addiction, like just, let's say, it's not just substance addiction, it's also behavioral addictions. Let's say the technique you have to escape your reality. It can be also sleeping, meditating, it could be anything, but we all have our coping mechanisms. And I feel like Saturn is going to require of us to really put in the work to transcend those addictions and liberate ourselves. And also the other thing it made me remember is that Pisces in, let's say, politics rules communism.
mm,
So anything that's going to, uh, let's say, make pretend, because let's be honest, it's sometimes it's an illusion. Most times it's an illusion that it's the far left. But I was also asking Gosha and her contacts if that could mean the implementation of the universal basic income
mhm,
pattern control, and also putting some structures and governments in Pisces, which is going to be a lot more focused towards everybody at the same level. Let's say, yeah, looking at communism. But again, I know it's those political far lefts and far right are basically illusions. But
mhm.
I think it could be very well be one of the strategies of, let's say, the dark ones. What do you
Mm. Yeah, I think they're going to want to try to do things for sure. I don't know if they'll be able to, because I think their time is really starting to run out more and
Yeah.
more and more. But those places that maybe still are playing out those things, certain places on the planet, they're definitely, I think, going to go for it for sure.
Thank you so much, Tarot Destiny. Ladies, you rock. Love you. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I also wrote in my notes victimhood, which is another
So
big theme
true.
of
Yeah.
Pisces energy.
Hmm.
And Saturn requires accountability. So I feel like it's going to be a big collective lesson to take accountability for what's on your path, because sometimes some people are like, oh, this is happening to me and I'm such a victim, and
Mm.
like, and it really bugs me because I know on a 3D level it may seem like you're a victim of your own destiny, but if you look at it from a more soul perspective, you're not a victim because you agreed to those challenges that would be occurring during this lifetime for you to get a chance to take accountability and let's see, level up, right? So
Mm.
it's kind of a big opportunity that sometimes this guy's opportunity, let's be honest, that sometimes Saturn gives you to up level. But if you're staying in this victim mentality, then you're kind of missing the opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
totally.
also another theme I wrote there is paying off karmic debts. So I
Mhm.
think it's going to be a big one, personally, but also collectively. Uh, Thank you so much, Corey Jade. Thank you, ladies, for your work. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate. So I think, yeah, a lot of like I'm kind of forcing with my personal situation at the moment. The karmic rewards are kind of in the air. I feel them about to come. So probably in March, when Saturn is in Pisces, it's going to be a big time for karmic retributions all around for all the people that worked hard in building structures, let's say, work hard on their spiritual journey. I feel like a lot of great rewards will be coming for all of those people. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Definitely. And I think that people who are the real deal, sometimes I use that term like the real deal, spiritual guides or teachers or lecturers or writers, they're going to be recognized for that. And it's not an ego thing, it just is what it is, because there's a lot of people right now that use social media, which I think can be a really toxic thing at the moment. And that's something I also want to talk about with you, maybe in another video, on how I think part of the Pluto and Aquarius is we're going to have to heal from our addictive attachment to social media and the technology, Aquarius.
Mm,
Um, but through social media, it's like there's all these fake spiritual guides.
right.
There's a lot of them, right? People that it's just, like I noticed one trend is a lot of young women who haven't been through their Saturn return yet, calling themselves like abundance masters and charging people $1,000 a month to do like an abundance course with them, which I'm sorry, that's not being a spiritual guide. Sorry if that sounds mean, but like there's so much more to spirituality than just money, or just abundance. And there's certain things that Saturn and Pisces is going to cleanse.
Yeah, I agree.
Does that make
But
sense?
yeah, I partly agree with your last statement because I feel like abundance is a big part of our spiritual journey,
Yes.
and we have to heal our relationship to money because a lot of spiritual people have had past lives being like making vows of poverty,
Mhm.
chastity. So we've come in this lifetime being very spiritual, but yet we have a problem in receiving. So I feel like it's good that we're all healing that aspect of ourselves as being spiritual people, but also integrated in the material. And yes, it's okay for you if it's your job even more to make money and good money out of it. Like it's only
Mhm.
natural because it's a give and take cycle. So yes, that part, but yeah, I believe also that Saturn in Pisces will let's say shed a light on who's in it for the real reasons and who's in it to make believe and that there's something they're not, basically.
Mhm.
Totally
Yeah,
agree. And
totally.
very interesting what you said about social medias and our addictions, because I'm seeing a lot of people, my generation, that are so hooked on social medias, and
Yeah.
honestly, it makes me a bit what's the word? Not depressed, but discouraged when I see the people my age and your age, and they're like, it's like they can't have a life outside of social media. It's like they're not present in the moment. It's like they they can't really, let's say, do something in their real life unless it's on social media and people see it,
Right.
and to have external validation that, oh wow, you did great. And it can be used like the right way, because obviously we're using social media right now, but I feel like I'm so disconnected from that myself.
Mhm,
It's been
mhm.
years. I don't even know if I did a post recently. It was probably years ago. And
That's
but
amazing.
yeah, I feel like we're all going to go through that cleanse, and it's like a really good point you raised there,
Hmm. Yeah.
because it's a tool, but also it had a lot of toxicity in it.
Can you
Is
hear
it
my
your
cat
cat?
meowing? Yeah. Yeah, he's echoing your sentiments, I think. Are you
Thank you
gonna
so
come
much.
up? Here, I'm gonna grab him just one second. This is
Uh,
Ocean.
oh,
He's a
hi.
Siamese tabby. Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
So
Yeah,
cool. The
and
cats are really present those days, eh?
they are. Yeah, Sophie's has been coming up too. Yeah, like more of the social media side is what I meant is toxic with some of these spiritual people. Not so much that it
Yeah,
is about abundance, but that, it's just about posting sexy pictures of yourself and people liking it. And like,
yeah,
that's the whole thing. It's
yeah, yeah,
very,
yeah. Like
uh,
you're meaning like they have the wrong frequency to go about it.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's about just the looks of things. What do you, I never hear him meowing like this. So
It's the first time I hear it too.
yeah, come here. So yeah, and it's interesting too because Pisces rules screens, right?
Right.
So even though Aquarius is the technology, innovation, and a lot of social media, Pisces is the screens and the illusions of just looking at a screen all day and
Yeah.
being brainwashed by it. So, and Saturn brings challenge and restriction. So I wonder if there will be something around that that kind of forces all of us to be less on the screens.
Interesting, to detox from our
Right.
addiction. Yeah.
Like
And
Saturn.
also it rules
Saturn,
mainstream media, Pisces also. So
right.
there's probably going to be a restructurize, how do we say that? Reorganization? Okay.
Restructure, reorganization. Yeah.
Yeah, let's say reorganization of the medias in general, because I feel like Saturn will cleanse a lot of this, let's say, illusion that's part of the mainstream.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Meg, for that. And
Yeah.
someone said, I'm trying to get the comment. You are the media. I can see it now. Thank you so much. Well, we're trying to create as much independent original content as we can. So please give it a like if you like this content. And don't forget to subscribe to Maison Jupiter channel on YouTube, where we post content as often, should I say, as we can. And there's going to be a pick a card also with Sophie that's going to be tomorrow at noon, exclusively on Maison Jupiter channel. And did you do the pick a cards, Meg, so far?
I have. I really like them. They're so accurate.
Right. She's really
Cool.
good. Sophie's very
She did.
intuitive.
Yeah.
And if you would like to book a one-on-one consultation with Meg, you can do so right here on maisonjupiter.com. It's going to be linked in the comments below. And there's the 1 year personal forecast appointment, which is an hour. And there is also the birth chart astrology reading if you want to know more about, let's say, all the aspects of your original birth chart and how to best deal with those energies. And
Mhm.
how would you recommend one or the other for people wanting to book with you, Meg?
Between one and the other, I think if there's not anything too pressing that you want to look at for the year ahead, I think starting with the birth chart is really, really good. to get that primer basis of who you are astrologically, what your personal cosmic map is of being here at this time. And then it's good to look at the year ahead, the transit astrology of what's coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have to book this one with you because we did the bird chart and it was amazing. And now I have to get a look at my year ahead because I know it's going to be very eventful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And also, if you would like to get your personalized bird chart, this is a digital product here on Maison Jupiter. You can do so here, and it's in the color of your choice. So basically, it's an art print in the color of your choice, featuring your birth chart. So it's going to be the same birth chart for all your life. So it's a really great tool to discover a bit more of who you are and also learn about how to locate the transits in your birth chart. What house is it going to affect? Let's say the next eclipses. What house is going to be activated by those eclipses? So that's very important to have your birth chart nearby, and you can do so right here. And it comes also with a 15 to 20 pages report explaining your planet placements and most important alignments. So here we are at the end of the show. Thank you so much, Meg. Would you like to add a little bit of Saturn guidance before we end the show?
Yeah, I just feel to say that if you know anybody who has their Saturn in Pisces, okay, which that's going to start March 7th. So whether it's their first Saturn return, if they're around the age of 30, or their second Saturn return around the age of 60, or their third one, 90, they're going to be going through it. They're in their initiation time. So let's support our brothers and sisters that are going to be going through those Saturn returns. And if you get more into the certain Saturn aspects that Julie was talking about, those squares and oppositions, it's also important to be there for our friends, our family, when they're going through those as well. Just to let them know, I'm here, I got you, I'm supporting you. I think it's really important because part of the Saturn return too is sometimes we can just want to isolate a little bit. I notice that a lot with people.
Great. I just want to answer here a question about what's the difference between Julie's birth chart and Meg. Well, the birth chart is going to be, let's say, a first step. If you don't know, let's say, anything about your birth chart or just the basic, it's going to explain the alignments. But if you want to go through, let's say, a more complete reading of your birth chart and also ask your questions with a one-on-one astrologer, this is going to be with Meg. So Meg is going to go and explain to you how they work together, all those planet placements. So if you want to get, like, let's say, your questions answered and go even deeper into understanding your birth chart, that's going to be the appointment with Meg would be better for that. So thank you so much, Meg. That was a pleasure to have you as always. And thanks everybody for commenting and being there with us. And let us know in the comments below, what did you think of this episode? And next one is going to be exceptionally in a month from now, and it's going to be the eclipse decode. So don't miss that one, because we're going to talk about the upcoming eclipses. And the eclipses are affecting us about a month before. So when we do the decode, it's going to be the beginning of the energy of the eclipses. So thank you so much. And don't forget to like this video. Thank you so much, Meg, and see you very soon.
Thank you, guys. Bye.